Alright, so I've heard this dumb theory also, okay? So, abusers doing man stuff or something, okay? What that basically means is that, you know, essentially, abusers are in a misogyny realm that's like, fuck you, and then everybody else is fuck you, and then they switch psyches when they get pissed and shit. So, construction. One of the things about construction is that if you don't, if you're around people in construction, that's pretty much macho dickheadness. You know, it's easy for me because I just don't really I don't do macho at everyone. I don't. I attempt to do ergonomic efficiency, which is to save my energy and strength for a long day's work by doing things in a well kind of thought out but like not strenuous way. Most people, especially these type, if they went into construction, they'd be wrenching the shit and they'd be, yeah, that causes like that shit, okay? Wrench it, fucking wrench it, just get at it kind of shit. That stuff. I mean, that's like where if you place those type of people around most construction workers are kind of like that, where they get her done kind of shit. That's where those people, that's just kind of how construction kind of gets in ways. But see, these people that have this fucking switching issue, if you're placing them around them, then they'll feed off of that, like, machismo kind of shit. And then that'll make them have, you know, and then everything is, don't do this, but yeah, then do that. Okay, and it's like, you just have to know how to work in that element with that type of stuff. Don't do this, but yeah, I'm gonna be sitting here doing that or something. I mean, that's kind of what it is. Okay, and so that shit tends to piss people off. Then everybody, like, long days work, fall behind on the timeline. People get pissed off. It's man instruction-y world. People get pissed. And they yell and shit, and then that isn't the right environment. And so then essentially police culture is kind of similar. And so that's not necessarily like a good environment for these type of people either. Basically. I mean, one of the things about dealing with a little boy that's stubborn and shit, you gotta really build some persistence and patience. You gotta be able to have patience. And so the people that'll be liked the most will be people like me that have a lot of patience with this type of stuff. See, the ones that get pissed off and walk off the jobs and shit, it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, every construction job depends. I mean, there's good ones, but a lot of the construction jobs, there'll be some moment like, here I was in January, it was freezing, and it was just miserable. There's some moments of wanting to walk off, but the whole idea is that, you know, that is something that, like, these type of people, if they were put in the same kind of situation, they would have walked off, okay? And that's like the no-no thing to do. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to walk off a job, basically. And so that's essentially where these people would be prone to that, okay? They really would. And so, and that, you know, the culture that they're coming from that created this situation is essentially recreated in a different, more physical construction way. But this idea about man stuff and doing and that gets in the way of a reintegration, okay? It really does. And so that's where the ideas of doing man stuff, that is for like somebody like me to be doing man stuff. Doesn't really require much thought. And then the theory that that comes from is that while doing that stuff, a lot of times it can jog memories and stuff from childhood abuse. That is what that is. And so the satanic S&Ms, they they think that somebody red integrated should be like at a women job or something, and then they think that all their weird machos should be at the construction jobs. And that in reality they should have something that is not strenuous and not macho-y, basically. And then you know, it's like construction is easy for me to do, even with people being like this. I don't get in the way of their stuff. See, I do things. I help people. See, I help. See, it's like, I'll help other people. See, these people are used to making everybody their bitch. That stuff doesn't work. See, it's like, if sometimes it'll be a couple people at one job station, kind of. I'm always moving stuff around. I'm always keeping it like flowing and stuff. And then sometimes I wouldn't do that, and I would see like changes in, not in the people, but in the job itself. And like, that's how you build people, or that's how you do construction. Okay, so the people would, some would be like, well, that's not my job. And so I'm kind of different, where it's like, oh, I'll help, I don't give a fuck. Basically, I mean, that's kind of what it is. It's just like, I don't give a fuck, I'll help. I attempt to fill up my day with stuff to do. And so what that does, it takes you long ass fucking 10-hour day. And it makes it go by quicker. See, a lot of people, they like are working at one job station, then they kind of get finished for that moment, and they kind of stand around, and then time ticks by. And so the whole idea is that I do stuff all day. That's just what it is. And so that's why I can do construction pretty easily. That's why this male stuff, I know how to douche. I mean, I know how to be a douchebag. That's easy. But see, I know how to be a douchebag in like a nice way. And then I don't get mad if somebody wants me to do some shit job or something like that. Okay, there's gonna be people in this world that essentially there'll be like a job that day. That'll be like the shitty job. And then if somebody came up and told me, I just wouldn't care. Okay, I just wouldn't. And there's gonna be these people that'll be like, fuck that, I'm out of here. Right? And so these people, they'll be prone to being like that, and they won't be successful, okay? It's like, where these people, yeah, they're kind of able to still maintain in that world, but that the ones that are really successful in that world are the ones that kind of have a mentality like me, and the ones that don't let, it's like, people will get to like a stopping point, and they'll get like real frustrated and shit, okay? And it's just like, oh well, it's like, they call it dead in the water. Okay, there's people that get mad about that. And it's like, I just whip out a cigarette. And then I attempt to, that's when you call your boss, basically. I mean, and that, a lot of people get real frustrated by that shit. And that is something that, like, when it comes to these people, they'll switch potentially at those kind of moments because they get so wanting to finish the job kind of stuff. It just like gets in under their skin. It's like, well, whatever. It just means the job will last one day more. That's how I view it. No, it just means like, essentially there's like kind of a timeline when you're dead in the water. what that means is that essentially what you were supposed to finish that day now creates another day in the job. And that means another day's pay. That's how I view it. So the whole idea is that frustration of dead in the water stuff, that's for the foremans. That's for the supervisors. They're supposed to be pissed about that stuff. That's what they're for. They're supposed to worry about that stuff. The only thing a construction worker is supposed to do is to attempt to be doing a decent job and to be filling your day with something to fucking do. And to not be getting pissed off and yelling. Basically. And so that's kind of how I roll with it. Okay? Oh yeah. Sometimes, you know what? Sometimes you gotta talk back at those managers because sometimes they also kind of take that stuff a little too far sometimes. And so you know, I'm used to correcting people when they go too far, basically. But I attempt to not do that. You know, it's just smarter just to let it brush away off. Basically, it's just smarter to do that. And so that's where these people are already misogynist and crazy about macho-ness. Essentially, you have to get them out of the macho element. Basically, they won't see being the abuser and being in a culture of the misogyny shit. That's what the abuser is, and that to reintegrate the psyche, you have to take yourself out of what culture and what things you were doing that built the split personality in the first place. And so that is where you really should think about, like, a lot of people, well, it's like, well, they're not supposed to go to a religion. Okay. It's kind of like, there's potential for, like, you know, if they have this issue, you know, there's potential for, like, EMT or stuff like that. Stuff where you help people. Stuff that isn't necessarily macho. Stuff that isn't necessary. I mean, there's, you know, the whole idea is that they're going to see blood and stuff. So if they're like those people, you want to keep them away from that. The whole idea is that they might need to just go back to school and figure out something that isn't on their list of man jobs. Basically, just remember that, and anything that has to do with psychology and shit, or religion. And so that's like where, you know, there's a lot of different things you can do. The whole idea is that most of the severance, see, there's an apprehensiveness of having those people in the government because they have a huge potential to build a liability. So that is where essentially what those people should do, instead of like manning out the demon or some shit like that, they should probably go to a psych unit. I mean, if they have money, potentially like buying a farm or something and just kicking it in your rocking chair and driving around your tractor or something like that. Something that essentially you don't necessarily have to be strenuous at a farming job. Basically, I mean that would be kind of if you're the worker, but if you're not as good as the Mexican dudes, then you're not going to be successful in that world. Basically, and then those Mexican dudes are they're super ultimate farmers. They are. And so that if you're not up to their caliber, then that's where you won't be successful in that world either. So essentially, you know, then it's like teaching or something, these people are prone. Just imagine little snot-nosed brats talking back to you. That's going to be no good. Yeah. And that is kind of where, in ways, some of these people are going to be kind of stuck or limited on what would be a good life choice, basically. A good life choice. And then, since their macho-ness views all artists as pedophilia, then it probably won't get, they more than likely won't be able to produce any art that they would view as good anyways. And so that kind of gets in the way. And so then, let's see, what else? About the man stuff. It's like, essentially, they just need to do something different in their life. The more they wrap themselves around the macho stuff, the more they're reinforcing the misogyny and stuff, that they really should just think about that, because in the end, there's lots of jobs that aren't necessarily macho, and that if they reintegrate themselves, then they can kind of sit at a desk and do something productive, and that as long as they're not around a macho element, then that will prevent in lots of ways. It's like, instead of having a wizard, if you delete the triggerings in your life, essentially it acts as having a master, kind of. That a master theoretically is supposed to hold these people from switching. That's kind of what the theoretics of what a master does in their world. That's what they're supposed to do. But theoretically, if you pull away the triggerings and the macho misogyny element that builds this, then essentially you're building a life around you that doesn't trigger you into switching. The longer you prevent that, the more your psyche mends, and then it'll harden again against this stuff after a time of not being switchy and shit. See, the more times you're switchy, then it becomes worse and worse and worse. And so if you take all the elements, the full circle, kind of like the gaslighting, full circle, all the world, if you take that out of the equation, then that's the stuff that pushes people into switching and back and forth and shit. And so then that's like, you see these women that are like, they'll be like powerhouse, like the movie Baby Boom. They'll be like powerhouse, ultimate cougar, like, and then all of a sudden they'll start some getaway resort or some bed and breakfast or something like that. Okay, that kind of stuff. They like walk away from their life, and then they end up being just so much happier and fulfilled in life. Think about that, because you weird misogynist dudes should really understand that the stressors in your life are preventing reintegration. And so these women that do that, they aren't necessarily this or anything, but the whole idea is that theoretically they're a witch, and so are all of you. And you see what they do, and then they are happier in life. Part of the happiness will prevent this type of stuff. See, the protection altar starts to go away as the human becomes more fulfilled and happy and normal and not psychotic. Then eventually it goes away. The protection altar from the satanic S&M sex slaving stuff. So there's a real way to like be getting rid of that stuff. But nobody, S&M has you all engulfed all the time. Paranoias and tantrics and potentials for weird new fetishes and weird psycho 50 slutting and abuse and subs and doms and subs and doms and subs and doms. That's what has all of you engulfed in all the time. And that's what causes it. So, if you just, this is kind of where, when it comes to like, when it comes to what I was saying about like the potentials for people like when it comes to like the witches, women, it's like the theoretical baby boom idea kind of can work for that. But see, there's kind of a lack of what that would represent in the male pedophile witch world. You see, this is like where the only things that they see, they're not smart, okay? They're not smart. So they're kind of limited in like what kind of jobs that they can get. Basically. And so without being smart, it makes school difficult, and that, that is where, like I say, the theoretical ways to walk away is like, you can get these women to walk away and do something more hippie-ish in life, okay? But that is where the theoretical way for this would essentially be to go out to a log cabin and chop wood and be like Jeremiah Johnson or something. Basically, that's like the theoretical, like, kind of baby boom theoretical idea. That's the kind of stuff that will basically be, I mean, that's what the hippies do. But see, if they surround them, you can't turn it into orgies and shit. It has to just be lumberjacking. Basically, it just means going out there, having some sort of theoretical money-making ability or something, and living outside of the concrete jungle and being away from people. And then what you'll find is that then you won't have all the super powerhouse fucking S&M kind of shit happening in your life. Things become simple. And then that's the kind of stuff that like would be the theoretical path for them. But see, they still got to make money. And that is kind of where most of what their skill set would be pretty much has them in a macho-y world. Pretty much. And that, you can't see, like me, I do construction. If I was to walk away and go back to school, I could get a psychology degree and probably a PhD in psychology. Because I'm a genius. But see, you people do the macho dumb stuff, okay? That's where people who do that are dumb. Like intellectually. And so that's like where, they need to have a real reality about themselves that will add to a reintegration, okay? Once you realize that you're being an imbecile, and once you understand what that means and how that limits in lots of ways, then you can start from a realization of what reality is. And that'll be a difficult part because they think that their man dick is genius or something. They do. They always think that they're smart or something for raping a kid in a satanic way.